Every time I step into my mother-in-law's house, I feel like something is off. A sense of discomfort, as if everything around me is being controlled by an invisible force. I can't explain it, but my body can't lie. Something is happening, and I know I have to uncover the truth. But can I trust myself, or is it all just my imagination? Every family gathering becomes a challenge, a battle I can't afford to lose. I tried my best to fit into my husband's family, but from the very beginning, I could feel my mother-in-law's coldness. At first, I thought maybe I was just the new person, and perhaps she needed time to adjust. But as time passed, I began to realize that something wasn't right. My mother-in-law wasn't simply unfriendly. She seemed downright hostile whenever it was just the two of us alone. Every time we met, she would look at me with a cold, piercing gaze, as though I were an intruder in her world. The words she spoke were not gentle either. She often said things with thinly veiled meaning, as if I didn't deserve to be a part of the family. It felt like I was always the outsider, always on the fringes, and every time I tried to engage with her, instead of getting help or kind words, I was met with sharp, mocking remarks. What made things especially difficult was my husband's attitude. He always believed his mother was wonderful and could never hurt anyone. I understood that he loved her and wanted to protect her, but every time I shared my feelings about the hostility I faced, he would tell me I was being too sensitive or that I misunderstood his mother. The more this went on, the more I felt isolated in this relationship. This situation dragged on, and eventually it started wearing me down. Just the thought of attending another family gathering at my mother-in-law's house made me anxious. Those gatherings always felt like a performance I couldn't escape, where I was stuck playing the role of the outsider. Eventually, I stopped wanting to go, but for the sake of family harmony, I kept trying to attend, and each time I felt like I was stepping into a foreign land full of hidden dangers. My mother-in-law always had these strange behaviors that made me feel uncomfortable, like I could never truly be myself around her. From small gestures to cold stares, she constantly made me feel unwelcome. And then one day I realized it wasn't just that I felt unwelcome. It felt like I was a burden in my own husband's family. Things seemed like they couldn't get any worse, and I had no idea what I could do to make things better. I didn't dare speak out about this to my husband, because I feared he would just tell me I was overreacting or making a big deal out of nothing. Every time I brought up his mother, he would become defensive, as if protecting her was the only thing that mattered. And slowly, I began to feel abandoned in this relationship, unable to find any empathy from the one person I thought would always be on my side. After attending several family gatherings at my mother-in-law's house, I started to notice something strange. Every time I left, I always felt incredibly unwell. At first, I thought it might just be a coincidence, but after several repeated incidents, I couldn't ignore it. After every meal at her house, I would experience severe diarrhea. This never happened when I ate anywhere else, and I started to feel like my body was reacting to something specific at my mother-in-law's place. My husband was completely fine. He ate like usual, never experiencing any issues, which made me feel like I was being paranoid. But these strange symptoms couldn't just be a coincidence. The discomfort after every family gathering was growing stronger, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. Maybe I was just being too sensitive, but there was something off. During those moments, I just wanted to run away from the suffocating atmosphere of those gatherings, but I couldn't, because I didn't want to cause trouble with the family. Still, I couldn't just let it go. Each family dinner was becoming a challenge. This time, I decided I needed to get to the bottom of it. I couldn't continue to doubt without concrete proof. So I came up with a plan. If I couldn't directly ask my husband or my mother-in-law about it, I would check for myself to see if something unusual was in the food. That evening, as the family gathered around the dinner table, I noticed my mother-in-law had prepared a lavish meal with traditional dishes, including horseradish and a small pitcher of au jus. There was something in those dishes that made me uneasy. Everyone was chatting, eating, and I pretended nothing was wrong. But in my mind, a plan was forming. When no one was paying attention, I decided to take action. I subtly switched the ramekin of horseradish and the pitcher of au jus between my place and my husband's. I couldn't explain the nervous feeling I had at that moment, but I thought if there was something wrong with my food, this would be the only way to find out. Although I didn't want to make things tense, I felt I couldn't keep suffering in silence with my doubts. The dinner ended, and we headed home. The feeling of anxiety didn't leave me, and I just quietly observed my husband. After a while, he started complaining of stomach pains, and soon enough, he had to rush to the bathroom. That was when I realized that my suspicions had been right. My husband had diarrhea, while I was perfectly fine. A mixture of relief and worry washed over me. I had done the right thing, but was I now facing a truth I wasn't ready to accept? When I realized that my suspicions were true, I felt like I had opened a door I wasn't sure I could close again. A rush of tension and anxiety washed over me. My husband still hadn't returned from the bathroom, and I sat there wondering if I had done the right thing. I didn't want to be the one to cause trouble in his family, but what I had just discovered was impossible to ignore. Should I talk to him about this, or stay silent and let things unfold on their own? When he came back, he didn't say anything about what had just happened. The stomach pain had passed, but there was a noticeable change in the atmosphere between us. I could feel the tension hanging in the air, as though he was also struggling with his own thoughts. I knew I had to say something, but I couldn't figure out how to bring it up without making things worse. So I stayed quiet. In the following days, I felt more anxious than ever. Every time I looked at my husband, I saw a distance in his eyes. He didn't seem as gentle or caring as before. Instead, there was a coldness. I began to worry that what I had just done might have pushed him further away. Would he side with me, or would he continue to protect his mother? The next day, I decided I couldn't stay silent anymore. I had to confront the situation. I couldn't continue living with this doubt and anxiety hanging over me. I called my husband over and told him everything I had been thinking. I explained how I had swapped the food between us and how I had felt something strange for a long time. I told him I couldn't bear to feel like I was being attacked secretly. I needed him to believe me, not just protect his mother without acknowledging the truth. He looked at me but didn't say anything right away. I could feel the inner conflict in him. A long silence passed before he sighed and then said something I would never forget. "You know my mother couldn't do that, right? She couldn't hurt you." Those words hit me like a slap, making me feel more insulted and confused than ever. His eyes looked at me as though I were the enemy, and I immediately knew that he had known all along what was happening. He knew what his mother had been doing, but he chose to stay silent. At that moment, I realized that the truth I had been seeking for so long wasn't what I wanted to know. The truth wasn't that I had been harmed, but that I had been abandoned in a battle between my mother-in-law and my husband. When I heard his words, it felt like the whole world had collapsed beneath my feet. It was a shock I couldn't accept. Not only was he protecting his mother, but he was also completely denying everything I had been through. The feeling I had been living with doubt and confusion all this time suddenly became clear. I had been deceived from the start. The truth wasn't that I had been harmed, but that I had been abandoned in a battle I had no part in. I tried to stay calm, but I couldn't. The things he said, the way he looked at me, it all felt like a slap in the face. I no longer felt like I was a part of the family. I asked myself, was I the only one who could see that something was wrong in all of this? Was I the only one hurting because of this indifference? And why had my husband chosen to stay silent, protecting his mother instead of standing by me, his wife? I couldn't keep living like this. I felt like I was trapped in a mess I couldn't escape. I had loved him. I had hoped that we could overcome any obstacle, but now I realized I had been wrong. That love didn't seem strong enough to face the cold reality I had to deal with. That night, I couldn't sleep. The emptiness in my heart felt like it was eating away at all my strength and patience. I couldn't keep living in a family where I didn't feel loved or respected. I couldn't continue hiding the truth that I had been pushed out, ignored, and treated like an outsider in my own home. The next morning, I made the decision to leave. I couldn't keep living in this lie. I couldn't keep enduring my husband's indifference. I couldn't stay in a family where I was never welcomed. I started packing my things in silence, saying nothing to my husband. Every item I packed felt like a final decision, like a declaration that I couldn't live in this pain anymore. When he found out I was packing, he didn't say anything. He just stood there and watched me. His eyes were filled with anger and helplessness. I could feel the disappointment in his gaze, but I also realized it was the look of someone who no longer understood me. We were no longer two people building a life together. Everything had changed, and I couldn't go back. With a heavy heart, I walked out of that house, leaving behind the life I once thought was mine. Nothing was certain, but at least I had made my decision. I couldn't keep enduring this relationship any longer. As I walked out of that house, each step felt like a slap to my heart. I couldn't remember how long I had stood at the door, the coldness from inside the house clinging to me like a ghost. Everything I had once trusted, everything I had once loved, now felt like something unfamiliar. The guilt, the emptiness, and the lingering pain that I couldn't shake off. Each moment felt like a battle. It seemed like with every item I packed, every step I took towards the door, I was struggling with myself, with emotions I never thought I'd have to face. My husband didn't call me back, didn't say a word to stop me. He just stood there, eyes full of anger and disappointment. That was when I realized there was nothing left to salvage. There was no forgiveness, no change. I had stayed in this relationship too long, accepting indifference and neglect, but now I understood I couldn't keep living in a marriage where I no longer trusted the person I was with. And I walked away, never looking back. The next day, as I began to face reality, it felt like I was starting a new life. Although it was incredibly painful, I couldn't deny the relief I felt from no longer enduring the lies and the mistreatment. For an entire week, I didn't hear a word from him. We stopped communicating. Everything went silent, and I could feel the growing distance between us. I hadn't expected that I would have to go through days like this, but I realized it was the only choice to find myself again. In the first few days, I felt empty, but I also began to rediscover things I had long abandoned. Old friends, hobbies I had neglected for the sake of the relationship. Everything seemed to call me back, like life was waiting for me. But the pain was still there, quietly lingering in my heart. The memories of my husband, of my mother-in-law, of the family dinners, everything still haunted me. A week later, he reached out to me. For the first time since I left, I got a short message from him. "We need to talk." I didn't know if I should meet him. I was still in pain, still feeling betrayed and deceived. But I knew I couldn't keep avoiding the inevitable. I had decided to face the truth, to face him, no matter how much it hurt. The next day, we met at a small cafe. He didn't speak right away, just sat there as if waiting for something from me. I looked at him, and in that moment, I didn't know if I felt anything other than the pain. But I also knew that this was the moment I had to decide, not for him, but for myself. Maybe this marriage had come to an end and I needed to let it go. But would I have the courage to move on?